Welcome back to Nature Nest TV, where we help you grow smarter, not harder. Imagine planting a vegetable just one time, and then harvesting food from that same spot for the next 5, 10, even 20 years without ever replanting. No buying seeds every spring, no tilling, no starting over from scratch. Just dig, harvest, and watch it grow back stronger every single year. Sounds like a fantasy, right? But these plants actually exist, and our ancestors relied on them to survive famines, wars, and harsh winters when annual crops failed. Today I'm revealing 7 secret survival routes that you plant once and harvest forever. We're talking about ancient, forgotten crops that modern agriculture has buried because they make you too independent. I'll show you what each root is, why it's been hidden from you, exactly how to plant and grow it with almost zero effort, how much food it produces, and the survival situations where each one could literally save your life. Plus, I've got a massive bonus tip at the end that shows you how to combine these 7 roots into an underground food vault that feeds your family through any crisis. Before we dive in, do me a huge favor right now. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Why? Because this is the kind of knowledge that gets buried, erased, and forgotten on purpose. The system doesn't want you growing your own food forever from a single planting. But I'm bringing this wisdom back, and I want to make sure you get every single video. Stick with me all the way to the end because what you're about to learn could be the difference between dependence and complete food security. Let's get into it. Route number 7, horseradish, the indestructible condiment that doubles as medicine. Let's start with one of the toughest roots you'll ever grow, horseradish. This is that spicy, nose-clearing root that makes your eyes water and your sinuses open up instantly. It's the stuff that goes with roast beef or gets mixed into cocktail sauce. But here's what most people don't realize. Horseradish is basically impossible to kill once you plant it. And I mean that literally. You plant one piece of horseradish root in the ground, and it will come back year after year, spreading slowly but steadily, producing fresh roots every single season. People have tried to get rid of horseradish by digging it up, and it still comes back from tiny root pieces left in the soil. What does horseradish look like? The plant grows large, coarse leaves that reach about 2 to 3 feet tall. The leaves look a bit like dock or large spinach. Underground, the roots are thick, white, and fleshy, usually 8 to 12 inches long and about as thick as your thumb or bigger. Why was it forgotten? Because you can't sell someone horseradish seeds every year when the plant literally never dies. Once you plant it, you own it forever. That's terrible for business, but amazing for you. How to plant horseradish. In early spring or late fall, get a piece of horseradish root from a farmer's market, grocery store, or garden center. You only need a piece about 4 to 6 inches long. Dig a hole about 12 inches deep in a sunny or partially shaded spot. Bury the root piece at an angle, with the top, the end that had leaves, about 2 to 3 inches below the soil surface. Water it in, and that's it. You're done. Maintenance? None. Seriously. Horseradish grows in terrible soil. It tolerates drought. It laughs at cold weather. The only thing you need to do is harvest it. How to harvest? In fall, after the first frost, dig around the plant and pull up the main root. Cut off side roots and replant them immediately if you want more plants, or just leave some root pieces in the ground. They'll sprout next spring. Peel the roots, grate them. Be ready for serious fumes. Do this outside or with a window open. And mix with vinegar to preserve the heat. Fresh horseradish is 10 times stronger than anything you buy in a jar. Survival value. Horseradish is loaded with vitamin C, potassium, and antimicrobial compounds. During harsh winters, when fresh food was scarce, people relied on horseradish to prevent scurvy and fight infections. It's a natural antibiotic and decongestant. Plus, one plant produces enough roots to last you all year, and it keeps producing forever. Yield. One established horseradish plant can give you 5 to 10 pounds of roots per year, and it keeps multiplying. Route number 6, Jerusalem artichoke, sunchoke, the underground calorie factory. If you could only plant one survival root for the rest of your life, this should probably be it. Jerusalem artichokes, also called sunchokes, are not from Jerusalem, and they're not artichokes. They're actually sunflowers that produce edible tubers underground, and these tubers are absolute calorie powerhouses. What do they look like? Above ground, Jerusalem artichokes grow tall, 6 to 10 feet, with bright yellow sunflowers that bloom in late summer and fall. The stalks are thick and sturdy. Below ground, the magic happens. The roots produce knobby, ginger-looking tubers that are light brown on the outside and white on the inside. They taste like a cross between potatoes and artichokes, nutty, slightly sweet, and delicious. Why were they forgotten? Because they're too productive. Once you plant them, they spread like crazy. You'll never need to buy them again. You can't patent them. You can't control them. They make you completely independent. That's exactly why they were pushed aside in favor of potatoes, which need replanting every year and are much easier for big agriculture to control and profit from. How to plant Jerusalem artichokes. In early spring, get a few tubers from a farmer's market, online seed company, or a friend who grows them. Dig holes about 4 to 6 inches deep and 12 to 18 inches apart. Drop one tuber in each hole, cover with soil, and water lightly. That's it. Now step back and watch them explode. Maintenance. Almost none. Water them during extreme drought, but they're surprisingly drought tolerant once established. They grow in poor soil, sandy soil, clay soil, basically anything. The only maintenance is keeping them from taking over your entire garden. Some people grow them in raised beds or along property edges where they can spread without causing problems. How to harvest. In late fall, after the first frost kills the stalks, start digging. You'll find clusters of tubers around the base of each plant. Here's the key. You don't need to dig up every single tuber. In fact, you shouldn't. Leave some in the ground, and they'll multiply and come back even stronger next year. You can also harvest them throughout winter as needed. The tubers store perfectly in the ground, staying fresh and crunchy even under snow and ice. How to eat them. You can roast them like potatoes, slice them thin, and fry them like chips. Eat them raw in salads. They're crunchy and sweet when raw. Mash them, or add them to soups and stews. Fair warning, Jerusalem artichokes contain inulin, a type of fiber that can cause gas if you eat too much at first. Start with small amounts and let your body adjust. Survival value. Jerusalem artichokes are calorie-dense, about 73 calories per 100 grams. They're loaded with iron, potassium, and thiamine. Native Americans relied on them as a staple food for centuries. One small patch, say 10 feet by 10 feet, can produce 50 to 100 pounds of tubers or more per year. And because they store in the ground all winter, you have fresh food available even when everything else is frozen. Yield. One planted tuber can produce 75 to 150 tubers in a single season. Do the math. That's exponential food production with zero replanting. Root number 5. Comfrey, the medicinal miracle that feeds you in your garden. Comfrey is one of the most useful plants you'll ever grow, and most modern gardeners have no idea it even exists. This perennial root produces enormous leaves, up to 2 feet long, that are packed with protein, vitamins, and minerals. But here's where it gets interesting. Comfrey has been used for thousands of years to heal wounds, reduce inflammation, and speed up bone healing. The name comfrey comes from the Latin word for to heal together. What does comfrey look like? The plant forms a large clump of broad, hairy leaves. In late spring, it produces clusters of bell-shaped flowers that are usually purple, pink, or white. Underground, comfrey has a thick, black-skinned taproot that grows deep, sometimes 6 to 10 feet down, which is why it's nearly impossible to kill once established. Why was it forgotten? Modern medicine replaced herbal remedies, and comfrey got labeled as dangerous because some studies showed it can contain compounds that might harm the liver if consumed in huge amounts over long periods. But here's the truth. Comfrey has been used safely for thousands of years when applied externally or consumed occasionally. And even if you never eat it, comfrey is a goldmine for your garden. How to plant comfrey. You need to buy comfrey root cuttings or crowns from a nursery or online. The best variety for food and medicine is Bocking 14, a sterile strain that doesn't spread by seed, though it does spread slowly from the roots. Plant root cuttings in early spring or fall. Dig a hole about 6 to 8 inches deep, place the root cutting in the hole, and cover with soil. Space plants about 2 to 3 feet apart because they get huge. Maintenance. None. Comfrey doesn't need fertilizer. It actually creates its own by mining deep nutrients from the soil with its long taproot. It doesn't need much water once established. The only thing you'll do is harvest it. How to harvest. Cut the leaves down to about 2 inches above the ground 3 to 5 times per growing season. The plant will regrow from the base every time. How to use comfrey. For food, Young comfrey leaves can be cooked like spinach or added to soups. They're high in protein, calcium, and vitamin B12, rare in plants. For medicine, make a poultice by mashing fresh leaves and applying them to bruises, sprains, or minor wounds. The leaves contain allantoin, a compound that speeds up cell growth and healing. For your garden, comfrey leaves are liquid gold. Chop them up and add them to compost, or make comfrey tea by soaking leaves in water for a few weeks. This creates a nutrient-rich fertilizer that's better than anything you can buy. Survival value. In a crisis, comfrey provides food, medicine, and fertilizer all from one plant that never dies. It produces more biomass per square foot than almost any other plant, and it keeps giving year after year with zero inputs. Yield. One comfrey plant can produce 4 to 5 pounds of fresh leaves per harvest, multiple times per season. Over a full year, that's 20 to 40 pounds of usable material from a single plant. Route number 4. Daylily tubers, the hidden carbs. Growing in your flower bed. Most people grow daylilies for their beautiful flowers, but almost nobody knows the roots are edible and incredibly productive. Daylilies produce small, tuberous roots that taste like a cross between potatoes and sweet corn. They're starchy, filling, and surprisingly delicious. What do daylily tubers look like? The plant itself produces long, grass-like leaves and tall stems with large, trumpet-shaped flowers that last just one day, hence the name daylily. Underground, the roots form clusters of small, finger-sized tubers that are light tan or grayish on the outside and white on the inside. Why were they forgotten? In Western culture, we stopped eating flowers and roots. We decided daylilies were ornamental only, even though they've been a food staple in Asia for thousands of years. In China, daylily tubers and flower buds are sold in markets and cooked in stir-fries, soups, and stews. How to plant daylilies. Buy daylily root divisions from a nursery or online. You want the common orange daylily, Hemerocallis fulva, or similar edible varieties. Avoid fancy hybrid daylilies bred purely for looks. Stick with traditional varieties that have been eaten for centuries. Plant the roots in spring or fall in a sunny or partially shaded spot. Dig a shallow hole, spread the roots out, and cover with 1 to 2 inches of soil. Space plants about 12 to 18 inches apart. Maintenance. 0. Daylilies are drought-tolerant, pest-resistant, and grow in almost any soil. They spread slowly over time, forming larger clumps. How to harvest. In fall or early spring, dig up an entire clump of daylilies. Shake off the soil, and you'll see clusters of small tubers attached to the roots. Snap off the tubers, replant the main root clump, and you're done. The plant will regrow and produce more tubers next year. How to eat them. Wash the tubers, trim off any stringy bits, and cook them. You can roast them like baby potatoes, boil and mash them, add them to soups and stews, slice and stir-fry them. They have a mild, slightly sweet flavor and a texture similar to water chestnuts. Survival value. Daylily tubers are pure carbohydrates, about 70 calories per 100 grams. They provide quick energy and are easy to digest. In a survival situation, one large clump of daylilies could provide several pounds of tubers, plus the flower buds and young shoots are also edible. Yield. One established daylily clump can produce 2 to 5 pounds of tubers per year, and the clumps multiply over time. Route number 3. Groundnut. Apios americana. Cromallarkalsi, the Native American secret superfood. Groundnuts are one of North America's best-kept secrets. Native Americans cultivated them for centuries, and early European settlers survived harsh winters by eating them. But today, almost nobody grows them, and most people have never even heard of them. What are groundnuts? Groundnuts are climbing vines that produce edible tubers underground. The tubers grow in chains along the roots, like beads on a string. They taste like a mix of potatoes and peanuts, nutty, earthy, and rich, and they're incredibly nutritious. What do they look like? Above ground, groundnut vines can grow 6 to 10 feet long, with compound leaves. Each leaf has 5 to 7 smaller leaflets. In mid to late summer, the vines produce clusters of fragrant, maroon flowers that smell like roses. Underground, the tubers are small, usually walnut-sized and reddish-brown on the outside with white flesh inside. Why were they forgotten? Because potatoes were easier to grow in large quantities and ship long distances. Ground nuts take 2 to 3 years to reach full production, which doesn't fit the fast food mentality of modern agriculture. Plus, they're native to North America, and when European crops became dominant, native foods were pushed aside and nearly forgotten. How to plant ground nuts. You need to buy ground nut tubers from a specialty seed company or native plant nursery. They're sometimes listed as Apios americana. Plant the tubers in spring about 2 to 3 inches deep and 6 to 12 inches apart in rich, moist soil. Ground nuts prefer partial shade in areas near water, like the edges of ponds or streams. Give them something to climb, a trellis, fence, or nearby shrubs. Maintenance, very little. Keep the soil consistently moist, but not waterlogged during the first year. After that, they're tough and self-sufficient. How to harvest. Wait until fall of the second or third year to harvest. Dig carefully around the base of the plant, and you'll find chains of tubers along the roots. Harvest some tubers, but leave several in the ground to regrow and multiply. How to eat them. Groundnut tubers must be cooked before eating. Never eat them raw. Boil, roast, or fry them like potatoes. Some people slice them thin and bake them into chips. The cooked tubers are dense, filling, and have a rich, nutty flavor. Survival value. Groundnuts are nutritional powerhouses. They contain 17% protein, 3 times more than potatoes, high levels of calcium and iron, complex carbohydrates for long-lasting energy. This is serious survival food. Native Americans considered groundnuts a staple crop, not a side dish. Yield. Once established, one groundnut plant can produce 1 to 2 pounds of tubers per year, and the patch slowly expands over time. Root number 2, Chinese artichoke, Krasen. The weird little tuber that tastes like heaven. Chinese artichokes, also called krosnies, are one of the strangest looking vegetables you'll ever see, and one of the most delicious. What do they look like? The tubers are small, about the size of your pinky finger, and segmented with ridges that make them look like fat, pale caterpillars or tiny pagodas. The plant itself looks like mint, because it's in the mint family. It grows about 12 to 18 inches tall with square stems and small, light purple flowers. Why were they forgotten? They're small, they're weird looking, and they don't ship or store well, which makes them useless for commercial agriculture. But for home gardeners, they're absolute gold. How to plant Chinese artichokes. Buy tubers from a specialty seed company in spring. Plant them 2 to 3 inches deep and 6 to 12 inches apart in loose, well-drained soil. They prefer full sun but tolerate partial shade. Maintenance? None. Chinese artichokes are perennial and come back year after year. They spread slowly like mint, but aren't as aggressive. How to harvest? In late fall, after the first frost kills the foliage, dig carefully around the plants. You'll find clusters of tiny tubers attached to thin underground stems. Harvest most of the tubers, but leave a few in the ground. They'll multiply and come back next year. How to eat them. Rinse the tubers. No need to peel them. The skin is thin and edible. You can eat them raw, and they're crunchy with a mild, slightly sweet, nutty flavor. Or cook them. Sauté in butter with garlic. Add to stir fries. Pickle them. Roast them. They taste like a cross between water chestnuts, artichokes, and hazelnuts. Survival value. Chinese artichokes are high in carbohydrates and contain a special type of starch that acts as a prebiotic, feeding beneficial gut bacteria. They're easy to grow, store well in the ground all winter, and provide fresh food when nothing else is available. Yield. One planted tuber can produce 50 to 100 small tubers in a single season. Plant a small patch and you'll have pounds of food year after year. Root number 1, skirret, the medieval root that fed. Kings and peasants. Here it is, the number 1 secret survival root that almost nobody knows about. Skirret was one of the most popular vegetables in Europe during the Middle Ages. It was grown in monastery gardens, castle gardens, and peasant plots alike. It was considered a delicacy, often served at royal feasts. And then, it vanished. What is skirret? Skirret is a perennial plant in the carrot family that produces clusters of sweet, white roots underground. The roots look like bundles of small, finger-sized carrots or parsnips. The flavor is sweet, slightly nutty, and delicious. Imagine a cross between carrots, parsnips, and sweet potatoes. What does it look like? The plant grows about 3 to 4 feet tall with divided leaves that look similar to parsley or celery. In summer, it produces clusters of small white flowers. Underground, the roots grow in tight clusters attached to a central crown. Each root is about 4 to 8 inches long and pencil thick. Why was it forgotten? Potatoes and carrots became easier to mass produce and ship. Skirret roots are delicate and hard to harvest commercially. Plus, they have a thin, woody core that needs to be removed, though some modern varieties have been bred without the core. So skirret was abandoned, even though it's one of the sweetest, most productive perennial roots you can grow. How to plant skirret. Buy skirret root divisions or seeds from a specialty seed company. Baker Creek and other heirloom companies sometimes carry it. Plant root divisions in early spring about 2 inches deep and 12 inches apart. Or sow seeds in spring in thin seedlings to 12 inches apart. Skirret prefers rich, moist soil and full sun to partial shade. Maintenance. Keep the soil consistently moist, especially during dry spells. Add compost or mulch around the plants to keep the roots happy. How to harvest. Wait until fall of the first or second year. Dig carefully around the plant and lift the entire root cluster. Separate the roots from the crown, replant the crown immediately, and it will regrow next spring. How to eat them. Wash the roots, trim off the ends, and cook them. Some varieties have a thin, woody core that you'll need to remove after cooking. It pulls out easily. You can boil and mash them like potatoes, roast them with honey and butter, add them to stews and soups, glaze them like carrots. They're naturally sweet and need very little seasoning. Survival value. Skirret roots are packed with carbohydrates, fiber, and vitamins. They're sweet enough to satisfy sugar cravings during hard times, and they provide serious calories. One plant produces 1 to 2 pounds of roots per year, and because it's perennial, you harvest year after year from the same plant. Yield. A small bed of 10 skirret plants can produce 10 to 20 pounds of sweet roots annually, forever, with minimal care. Bonus tip. How to create your underground food vault. Using these 7 roots. Alright, here's the massive bonus I promised. And this could change everything about how you approach food security. Instead of planting these 7 roots randomly around your garden, what if you created a dedicated perennial root bed, an underground food vault that produces hundreds of pounds of calories year after year with almost zero maintenance? Here's how to do it. Step 1. Choose your location. Pick a spot that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight per day. Ideally, choose an area that's slightly out of the way, maybe along a fence line, property edge, or corner of your yard. Make the bed at least 10 feet by 10 feet, 100 square feet. Bigger is better. Step 2. Prepare the soil, one time only. Loosen the soil to about 12 inches deep. You can use a broad fork, spade, or tiller. Mix in plenty of compost or aged manure to give your roots a good start. This is the only time you'll ever dig or till this bed. After this, it's hands off. Step 3. Plant strategically. Here's a sample layout for a 10 by 10 bed. Back row, tallest plants. 3 Jerusalem artichoke plants, spaced 3 feet apart. Middle rows, 5 skirret plants, 5 groundnut plants with a trellis for the vines to climb. 3 daylily clumps. Front rows, 5 Chinese artichoke plants, 3 horseradish plants. Keep them on one side so they don't spread everywhere. 5 comfrey plants, spaced 2 feet apart along the edge. Step 4. Mulch. Heavily cover the entire bed with 4 to 6 inches of mulch, straw, wood chips, or shredded leaves. This suppresses weeds, retains moisture, and feeds the soil as it breaks down. Step 5. Water the first year. During the first growing season, water regularly to help everything establish. After that, these plants are on their own. Step 6. Harvest and maintain. Starting in fall of the first year, or second year for slower plants like groundnuts, begin harvesting. Dig Jerusalem artichokes in late fall. Harvest daylily tubers in spring or fall. Pull horseradish roots in fall. Dig skirret in fall. Harvest Chinese artichokes after frost. Check groundnuts in year 2 or 3. Cut comfrey leaves 3 to 5 times per year. Always leave some roots in the ground to regrow. Never harvest everything. What you get? From this 100 square foot bed, you could easily harvest 50 plus pounds of Jerusalem artichokes, 10 plus pounds of skirret, 5 plus pounds of daylily tubers, 5 plus pounds of horseradish, 3 plus pounds of Chinese artichokes, 3 plus pounds of ground nuts, once established, minus 20 plus pounds of comfrey leaves. That's over 100 pounds of food per year, every year, forever, with almost zero work after the first planting. And here's the best part. These roots store in the ground all winter. You don't need a root cellar or canning equipment. Just dig them up as you need them, even in freezing weather. Why this knowledge could save your life? Let me be real with you for a minute. We live in uncertain times. Food prices keep rising. Supply chains are fragile. Climate is changing. And most people are completely dependent on grocery stores for every single calorie they eat. But you don't have to be. These 7 roots give you something most people have lost. True food security. Once you plant them, they're yours. No one can take them away. No corporation controls them. No supply chain disruption affects them. They just grow, year after year, producing food, multiplying, spreading. In a real crisis, economic collapse, natural disaster, long-term food shortage, these roots could literally keep you and your family alive. And even if nothing bad ever happens, you've still got fresh, nutritious, delicious food growing with almost no effort. That's a win no matter what. Final thoughts. Plant once. Harvest forever. Look, I know this all sounds almost too good to be true. Vegetables that you plant once and harvest forever. Roots that multiply on their own. Food security with almost zero work. But it is true. These plants exist. They've fed people for thousands of years, and they'll feed you too, if you give them a chance. The reason you've never heard of them isn't because they don't work. It's because they work too well. They make you independent. They make you self-sufficient. And that's not what the modern food system wants. So take back your power. Plant these roots, learn them, grow them, and pass this knowledge on to your kids and grandkids, because this is the kind of wisdom that built civilizations, and it's the kind of wisdom that could save yours. All right? That's it for today. If this video opened your eyes to the power of perennial survival roots, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, drop a comment telling me which root you're most excited to plant, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another life-changing video from Nature Nest TV. And listen, if you know someone who's worried about food security, who wants to grow their own food, or who's just tired of replanting their garden every single year, share this video with them. This knowledge needs to spread. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Now go out there and plant something that'll feed you forever. Nature Nest TV. Grow smarter, not harder.